Hello, happy Monday. Do not adjust your set. I know the thumbnail says Friday and it's Monday because I had this great idea that I would make the Friday thumbnails say Friday and the Monday thumbnails say Monday, but I thought about it on a Friday morning when I have more time available right before I go live, and then every Monday I realize I haven't made that thumbnail. I'm terrible, but I can scrapbook. So stick with it and we'll do that. Let's go to the desk and not have me ramble anymore. All right. I mean, I'm going to ramble, but ramble on different topics than that. So it is Monday, not Friday. And we have got a nice little stack growing of 2025 layouts now. So this one is going to have journaling here with 2 4x6 photos and a half and half composition. Then this one was a starting point with a single 4x6. He's been laughing because we've taken this kind of selfie a lot this month, and I have like a whole little series of them, which is very sweet. Then a more mixed media version here with a single 4x6. 2 4x6 on this starting point that had a big box that way. Lots of bullet pointed journaling. And then this one, which is going to have journaling here and here, where we followed the magazine sketch from Scrapbook and Cards. So that's what we've done so far. Liking the groove of this For the Record collection, how it all looks, with a little bit of 49 at Market thrown in and a little bit of Reasons to Smile thrown in. Now, a starting point today. So we're going to start the layout without the photos, get to a certain point. We'll pause and say, right, here's the middle of the process. And then I will carry on in the same video to show you how I then put my particular photos and story onto that layout and finish it off. But you might have different number of photos, different size of photos, different themes, all of that sort of thing. So you could take it in your own direction from that pause point. Now, interestingly, I've chosen to do 4 tiny pictures today. So I've got 4 photos from different days, all on a theme, because I was realizing in going through my photos, and you've heard me say a couple times this month that, oh my goodness, like all the pictures I have in January are all the same thing. They're all the show. And you don't want to see me scrapbook Starlight Express every single day. So I was looking, and I already had the thought of, well, you know, sometimes one thing is quite big in your life and therefore you have lots of photos of it. And then I realized, there's another thing that's really big in life that's why we're not going out and doing other stuff. And it's just one that I wouldn't have photos of in the same way. So I'm going to do a layout today that is about exam season. And so what I ended up doing was printing little random snapshots I had taken of him studying or doing homework in different places over the last month or so, because we're now in the final stretch. So he has done all the paper tests, unless he's asked to do anything else. But as far as we know, he's done all the paper tests. He's now got his interview section. And then, so this kind of era is coming to a close. And then we'll have the sit and wait era, which, you know, that's lovely. But at least we can fill the empty time with things that are more exciting. Yeah? Okay, so I'm going with those photos today, but I am largely going to put that away for the first half of the video. Let us look at what paper we have remaining, because what do we have? 3 more videos? What day does February start on? Do we have 4 or 3? We have, we have, including today, we have 4 because February starts on a Saturday. So we have got this week, Monday and Friday, next week, Monday and Friday. Right. Cool. Let's get back to the right. Nope, that's not the right window. This is the window. Okay. Georgia would like to know if she can outsource her assignment to WB. Well, do you want it done in the style of a year 6 student who just got his pen license? Yeah, there you go. That's what you'd be outsourcing to. Does that meet the requirements of your assignment? Okay, so we have these papers. We have this. Pen licenses were not a thing when I was a kid. Do you grow up with a pen license where the teacher has said, okay, your handwriting is strong enough that you can use a pen instead of a pencil, except for math? The funny bit was, I'm not quite sure. I never got to the bottom of why this is the current ethos. But even in the pencil era, all through these years, they were not allowed to use an eraser. So if they made a mistake, they were supposed to cross through it so the teacher could see that they had made a mistake, spotted their mistake, and crossed through it. And I very much did not cope with this very well. And I would often have him telling me off because when he would do homework, I'd be like, no, this is looking way too messy now. Just erase so that your work looks nice. And he's like, but I'm not supposed to erase. But if you're constantly crossing through, even if it's in pencil, it's going to look really messy, right? But that was the ethos. Don't use an eraser. And now he can use a pen in year 6. Some kids have beautiful handwriting and don't cross through, and they get their pen license very early. So some of his friends have had it since they were like 7, 8 years old, but he's 10. But his handwriting, I give him credit. It looks gorgeous right now. So yay, well done. Georgia, they had pen license at her school, and then you could use a pen in year 6. And Sophia says when she was in school, it was a case of you needed to get your handwriting up to par because there came a cutoff point, and in that year you had to use a pen. You weren't allowed to use a pencil anymore. I don't think we had to use a pen until we were about 14. I think from about 12 to 14, we had the option in non-maths classes that you could use pen or pencil. I don't think pen was required until high school. And I actually think in quite a few subjects, you would have been fine to turn most things in pencil. So it is a little bit more formal, I suppose. Jade had a pen license in her primary school, and now she's a teacher and gets to give out the pen licenses. Oh, and she doesn't like her students using erasers for 2 reasons. It gives her a track record of what they've done, and some students fuss so much and spend so much time erasing. Yeah. I just found it really hard to look at a piece of work that he would do where I would know if we took the presentation out of it, the content here is good. But it looks an awful mess because everything has so many crosses through it because he's left-handed and he is not a natural speller. He's made loads of progress, but I'm sorry, I just think natural speller is a good label. Either you just find spelling really, really easy or you don't and you have to work at it. And then there's more complicated bits beyond that. But that's the 2 giant categories. Either it comes easy to you or it does not. And he had to work at it. And so he would do a bit of writing that would have loads of good things that he learned, but it would be so full of cross out stuff that it would look more like crossing out than content. And he's like, no, mommy, this is really what I have to turn in. I have to do it this way. Anyway, we haven't scrapbooked yet. I should actually scrapbook before we get into the random rubbish. Heather Ann doesn't like pen license because they're very unfair to left-handers. I have a left-hander who will tell you all about that. Yep. Sure thing. Now, I was thinking we could use numbers because we've got school stuff. We could also use typewriters because I know he didn't have to do his work on a typewriter, but I still kind of think of typewriters are a writing element. Yeah. So, do you think we could make those 2 go together? I don't like them next to each other. We need something with a nice bit of contrast in the middle. But then I think we can make it work. Okay. Let's get a Frankenstein piece of paper because apparently we got to get through 4 layouts with these papers. And I maybe should have thought about how many live streams I needed to do with January and put more paper in. But it's okay, because I don't know if I've ever told you, but I own more paper than what I use in a video. So I might just use some of that other paper. Could even use some of my own collection paper, mix it in. Because some of you might have bought that. It would be all handy. Everything's good. Okay. So let's go ahead and take this one here. We are getting down to single digits of purple paper, by the way. I haven't decided what to do about the celebration of the last piece of purple paper, but we'll do something. Answers on a postcard. What do you think? Oh, I always forget that that's a very British phrase. I don't mean it literally. You can just say it in the chat. It's a very British thing to say answers on a postcard, but I love it. Right. Is the sound okay at the moment? Let me know if not. Right. Virginia says she has a pretty good stash of Shimelle paper. I highly applaud that stash. Debbie too. And it's super cold where Debbie is. It's not normally cold there. So, you know, I think we all have strict instructions to Debbie to stay inside with hot beverages, blankets, and scrapbooking. So we're all good. Okay, sounds all right so far. Okay, cool. I've kind of changed the placement of the microphone, and I was worried that it's like literally too close to like my voice box and that it might kind of reverberate strangely, but it just feels weird to me because it feels like it's actually stuck like a choker on me. But I was trying to find ways to keep the sound quality nice and strong. Okay, let's have a border punch. Debbie's gonna stay inside and scrapbook. Good morning, Corey. Georgia, that's exactly what I was thinking. Here I am putting my microphone on my clothes when I could just get a 90s necklace and wear it as a choker. And go back to my kind of Buffy the Vampire Slayer era of clothing inspiration. There were a lot of chokers involved. I actually have a really specific memory about wearing chokers in the 90s with this outfit that I absolutely loved as a teenager. But somebody's comment, so I mean, I know this will shock you, absolutely shock you, but I kind of did my own thing with clothing as a teenager. And I honestly did not care if somebody was like, oh, that's a weird outfit. If I liked it, I liked it. I did not have that confidence in all elements of my life, but I did in putting outfits together. Who knows why? So in the kind of early grunge phase of baggy jeans and flannel shirts, I had an outfit that was an old flannel shirt that was kind of orange, yellow, green plaid, very worn out, very much. This was worn by somebody who had a tractor or something. And baggy jeans, combat boots. And like, we wore all these clothes that were giant, but then we also wore fitted things underneath. Yes. So I also had like a green velvet bodysuit. And I used to wear it with this green crocheted choker that had like a silhouette cameo, not a silhouette cameo. But those are the words I want, but not the machine. You know, like an oval with a face. Yes, that kind of silhouette cameo. I've never once realized that goes together on the machine. That's funny. What else would we call that? I don't know. Anyway, one of those pendants where it was like a woman in profile. Yeah. So I would wear this combination. I wore it many times, and I had long stick straight hair that I would put in little tiny braids at the top, and yeah, loved this outfit. Very, very confident of this outfit. And once I'd gone with my friends to the cinema, and the cinema would mean going into the bigger town. We didn't have a cinema in my little farm town. You had to go into the next suburb. For my Kansas City locals, it means I had to drive into Olathe to go to the movie theater on Santa Fe, which had 8 screens, like the Olathe 8 back in the day. Right, between the Walmart and the Kmart. 1990s Southeast Kansas City, not Southeast Kansas City, south of Kansas City geography. There we go. I can use words. Anyway, so there would be people from other schools there. Okay, we got 3 pieces. I like this between. That solves a big problem there. Okay. So then, trying to decide which pieces. So I was there, and I think I was like fixing my lipstick in the bathroom mirror or something. And this girl came up to me from another school, and she was like, "Did you really mean to wear all those things together?" And I said, "Yeah, I love this outfit. Why?" And she said, "Don't you realize that you should never wear a choker with a collared shirt?" I remember this so specifically, and it was like she had read it in YM magazine or something. And she was so sure of herself. You should never wear a choker with a collared shirt. And I don't know why I found this hysterical. So I came out of the bathroom absolutely laughing to my friends, and I said, "I'm sorry, I have to make an outfit plan for the next like 3 weeks. All I can wear is chokers with collared shirts." And my friends were looking at me like, "What? What? You went to the loo and now you're just bonkers." And so I told them the whole story, and they're like, "Who made her the decision maker of what goes with chokers?" And it was just so funny. And it became this running joke for years. And if you had any kind of necklace, we would just change it. And so we'd be like, "Don't you know, you can't wear a pendant with tennis shoes? Don't you know, you should never wear a headband with jeans?" And we came out with all these random combinations. And it's just still stuck in my mind forevermore that one should not wear a choker with a collared shirt, but I actually still really love a choker with a collared shirt. I did it before, and I would do it again. There we go. Oh, funny. Right, so I suppose I should do my speech before I build any more, shouldn't I? But we have now a few pieces ready. We're not at the end of the starting point yet, but we've done some stuff there. Hello! I don't have a collared shirt or a choker. It's so disappointing now. My name's Shimelle. I teach online scrapbooking classes, design scrapbooking products, and help you use them to tell your stories in a creative way. It's not just my hobby, it is my job, and that means anytime you scrapbook on the internet, it's considered advertising, and legally, I need to make sure you're aware of that. So thank you for coming to watch my hashtag advertising. I appreciate you being here, whether you are live, chatty, watch from Tomorrowland, quiet, craft, don't craft, thinking about coming back to craft, all of it. Pick up a new hobby in 2025. We love scrapbooking and we're not afraid to say it. Yeah. Come play with pretty paper. Anyway, all of the stuff that you might want to find on the internet related to me is probably in the box that describes this video. The supplies I use today are from the January shopping list, January Best of Both Worlds, but there's already a shopping list for next month. That's the February Best of Both Worlds list. So you can find either of those links. You can either go ahead and get what I've used to make all this stuff in January, or you could order February's kit so that it's ready to start in a couple weeks, and then you can scrapbook the whole of February right along with me, and put your own photos and stories onto those pages. And you will always have options to make things work for you, because I'm not all about making identical pages for everybody. I want you to be able to follow some steps to be then an independently creative person, to feel good about where you're putting stuff on the page, with the number of photos you want to include, the orientation of the photos you want to include, the size of the photos you want to include, how much writing you want to include, and all of that. Cool? Let's go. Okay. She would probably also say that I shouldn't wear skeletons in January. You must not wear skeletons in January, but I'm wearing skeletons in January. Okay, so I think we go to the papery pack and the journaling cut apart here and the 49 Market die cut pack, right? So we've got all these big boxes rather than more pieces of paper at the moment, okay? I mean, it's all paper, but is the paper 12 by 12 or is the paper already cut into small pieces? That's what we're talking about. Okay, so let's have a journaling piece here. Also, let's talk about why this works, because I did this combination here on the background, largely because this is the amount of that piece that I had left. But this is a 1/3, 2/3 background, right? This is about 4 inches wide. This is about 8 inches wide. That divides your page into thirds, yeah? And thirds are really easy on the eye. It lets us put things in aesthetically pleasing places because it is kind of telling us where to look, and that can be really helpful. So it's always going to be a nice balance to have a 4-inch strip and an 8-inch strip, or 4-inch box, 8-inch box. And then you can either put them up next to each other, no problem, or if you don't like how the patterns look next to each other, add a contrasting piece. It can be straight, it can be torn, it can be scalloped, it can be whatever you'd like. But by having that kind of divider that's contrasting, don't go with the light blue, don't go with the white. You need to pick out one of the POW colors, yeah? One of the colors that gives you a nice contrast from those two pale backgrounds. Or if they were both dark, you go with something like light and bright. Could be white, could be yellow. Yeah? So that will then give you a divider between the two pieces that don't have a lot of contrast. I am going to say this one is probably looking like it's on a white background on your screen. It seems to be coming across a little extra hot today, but it's actually light blue in the background with a little grid behind the numbers. Okay, so I have here 3 cut aparts from the same collection. Now we're going to look at the pieces that are not that collection. And bring in some yellow, some wood grain. The pinks here aren't really the right kind of pink, so I'm going to leave that. Let's go ahead and ink these. Hello, Shell. Corey had very similar fashion sense, but she had a navy bodysuit instead of green, and she wore Birkenstocks instead of combat boots. It's probably warmer where you lived. I had fake Birkenstocks, but really only like 3 months of the year that I felt like it was safe to wear them. And we're the Birkenstocks with socks, like, age group. Did you wear socks with your Birkenstocks? I didn't realize that I was bucking the trend of wearing socks with Birkenstocks until my choir teacher one day, we must have been doing some activity where we had to be barefoot. Well, we were supposed to be in our socks, and I had chucked my fake Birkenstocks to the side of the room. They were totally from Payless, let's be honest. Chucked them to the side of the room, and then everybody else had socks on, and I was barefoot, and I was like, oh, I guess I should really wear socks with my Birkenstocks more often. And she looked at me and she went, you're just not a socks with sandals girl, and we know it. And I was like, what does that mean? Corey is doing milkshakes for MLK Day. I love it. A friend's kid misunderstood MLK Day and thought it was a spelling mistake and convinced it was Milk Day. So they have made their own holiday tradition ever since. You must now go out and enjoy a milkshake for MLK Day. That's adorable. A milkshake for you. You get a milkshake and you get a milkshake. Everybody gets a milkshake. Okay, so which colors would match well with what's here? This green goes well. This one. This is a snapshot-y kind of page, so the snapshot piece seems sensible. I will have to think about what I'm going to do with kind of this sort of piece. That's the least me. But see, this one is easy because I'll just use the layering edge. Like the yellow flowers, that's not problematic. Let's have a little tab there. I can have yellow. I can have a blue label. Okay, I think he'll shout at me if I put the die cut that says delightful on the page about exams. Okay, so let's have those. Definitely not the joyful words. Anything else in here? I like these musical ones. They're not for this, but I need to remember I have all of these little musical phrases in here. I mean, they're referencing like bird songs, but there's no reason why we can't use it to reference people who sing. I have some of those in my house. People who sing. So, here, I could totally mess with his head. Such a lovely time. Yes, that year that I studied all through Christmas break, except for Christmas Day and Boxing Day. Yeah, I don't think he would be impressed. How many photos on this one? I have 4 little ones. Yeah. Okay. Let's ink the ones that just came out of the 49 Market pack. Corey was definitely a socks with Birkenstocks kind of girl. That was normal, and she was in Tennessee. I mean, my music teacher had a point. I do remember one of the nicest things when I was teaching, and I kind of worked my way up. So I started as, I even started as, I was kind of training on the job because I didn't go into teaching from the normal, go get a teaching degree. I did my subject degree. And then I went into a program where you just started in a school and you sorted out the how to teach part as you went. Fun. But anyway, that's what happened. That's what I did. And so I started, bottom of the ladder and worked my way up to be head of this department. And when I became head of department, I was so excited because no one could tell me off if I sat on the desk. I had been told when I first started teaching that no one would respect me if I sat on my desk. I disagree with this sentiment, but I knew where they were coming from. It's that same concept where teachers say you don't smile till Christmas. You need to set your standards and get to the point where people will still respect you even though you sit on the desk. And so when I reached that point where I realized, oh, I really am part of the furniture here and the kids don't mess about for me, I can sit on the desk. And there was like a day where I was like, I'm going to sit on the desk in all of my lessons today and see if anything bad happens. Nothing bad happened. It was brilliant. So I then had this era of teaching where in the summer term I would sit on my desk and I didn't wear Birkenstocks, but I wore like dressy sandals. So I was definitely no socks with sandals all the way into my teaching job. Who knew the choir teacher knew me so well? Okay, so we've got 2 pieces here layered. Corey says, well, my teacher sat on the desk all the time. But Corey, keep in mind, I'm guessing you didn't go to a school that had the same sort of issues as where I taught. Imagine me now as Michelle Pfeiffer in that movie where they used Gangster's Paradise. What was it called? What was that movie where she teaches in the inner city school and all the students look about 40 because they've seen things, man? It wasn't quite that extreme, but we had challenges. Let's just say that. So I went in as this like very petite American, Dangerous Minds, that's one. So I went in as a very petite American young teacher, and my first year there, when I first walked into the job, they said they're not going to let me have any classes older than the first 3 years of the school because they thought the older years, the teenagers, would just eat me alive. So I had 11, 12, 13-year-olds, and my 13-year-old class was like challenging. But the upside of teaching in a school like that is that staffing is often a rotating door, and you constantly have teachers coming in and out. If you stay for a little while, then the kids kind of realize, oh, she's not going to leave, and they settle down a bit. That was my experience anyway. But yeah, it was an adventure every day. Daily adventure. That's what it was. That die cut. Daily adventure. Corey says her school had a serious hippie vibe. Yeah, no hippies where I taught. Okay. Do you think we go for something like this? I think we then have nowhere to write. Yeah. Debbie taught 13-year-olds for 19 years, and they were her tribe. She loved them. See, this was really, it was really interesting to me teaching teenagers because when I started, I had absolutely no interest in teaching primary, which goes up to age 11 here. And then our next grouping is 11 to 16, or some schools go 11 to 18, just depends on the setup of the school. And I always said I wanted to teach teenagers, and people would look at me like, why would you volunteer to do that? And I said, I'd rather have students with opinions. And then I came into this school where they opinions, yes. It was just perhaps not exactly what I was expecting. But I actually Yeah. I mean, my biggest problem, I never got upset about the kids. I would take home a lot of drama from the kids, like, um, you know, when you are in a school that has that sort of situation, then chances are you are teaching kids who don't all have consistent support at home. And I did have the trouble that I found it really difficult to switch off, and I would stress about kids all hours of the day. So I had that, but kids were never what drove me away. Even the kid who took my phone, even the kid who would get up in my face, even the kid who followed me home on the bus and threatened me walking out. And I mean, I got mugged by students once. They were really disappointed that I didn't have more money. I had like my bus fare in change, and they were not impressed. They threw it back at me. But yeah, like, the kids were never what drove me away. It was the fact that I worked for an administration that didn't care what happened to the kids. And so I was holding like all of this care, and I was working for people who were kind of like shrugging it off. So there we go. But then when WB was born, I just reread loads of education training and suddenly was like, oh, I could have done primary, but I do think I could never have done primary before I had a child, because it was only having a child that made me have any patience for small humans. Otherwise, I wanted the spark. I wanted kids who kind of argued back, and I'm okay with that. So there we go. Yeah, I really just wanted to work for more inspiring adults rather than the much change in the kids. I mean, I had some that were frustrating, definitely. I had some where I was like, seriously, again? But I think even in a fancy school, you must have the seriously agains, right? All of you who are talking about your teaching experience in the comments, do we agree? It doesn't matter what kind of school it is. It's human nature that somebody is going to be your seriously again? Yeah? Corey, yes. Give me inner city teens any day, but skip the bureaucracy. There we are. There we are. So now I think I'd be okay with younger children, but I think teens probably still have my heart. But let me just not put that in ink. No, I'm not using my pen license for that opinion, because I said I could cope with young people when my child was a young person. When it gets to a teen, I might change my opinion. So we'll see how that goes, shall we? Right. I've now put enough on here that I'm starting to get some layers, and I've got some journaling space. Fabulous. But I know you're going to be saying, but you put the journaling space in the middle. What's that about? Why did you not put this next to this? And you could. The reason I put them across from each other and did not put them right next to each other is because look at the coloring. They both have the same color background, and they use the same colors, but they're on this center bed. Yeah. So there we go. Jade said she never worked with 4 to 5-year-olds until she had her own child, and it seemed really awkward to me before then. Yes, I taught in a relatively low literacy area for 11 plus, and the very first thing that panicked me was, I don't know how to teach someone how to read. That was not what I knew how to do. Do I know how to like teach you how to analyze what you're reading? Heck yeah, I can do that. We're good. But I didn't know how to teach somebody how to read. And I would have those kids in my class and be like, we need another person in our department who actually has primary experience or has a specialty in low literacy, because I'm out of my depth here, and nothing here is going to train me how to do this in the amount of time I have with this child in front of me. Like, I need to know yesterday what I'm doing. And that was an interesting experience. Okay, then we're going to take another journaling box up here. Admittedly, if you're just going to use one photo and it's going to be down here, maybe you skip this. But I think I'm going to need the writing lines here. Okay, so we're going up. Also, now that I have this much covered, that big number print in the background is no longer quite so overwhelming. It was a bit like, whoa, it's a page about numbers. And now, not so much. Yeah. Amy says she's taught high school for 26 years, and there's always a kid or two that she just has to shake her head at. Yep. Yeah, I think you get it at all demographics. It's just a personality type where the words go in, but it does not equate to action coming out. Oh, yes. Ginny, I couldn't do that either. And I was told the same thing. Ginny said when I was teaching, they told me that I cared about the students too much and I needed to leave school at that school. And that isn't who I am, so I didn't last. Yeah, same. Corey says she doesn't know anybody either. I do know a few, but I don't feel like they're the greatest teachers. I don't know anyone who could leave it all at school and was also amazing in the classroom. Okay, satisfactory. That's satisfactory teaching and can leave it at school. Epic teaching, you're taking it all home. That's what I found with my colleagues. Oh, hey, what are we calling you? AJC's mom. Her daughter, is that AJC? Is a teacher, and she went from teaching 4th grade to 1st grade, and she called in a panic because they didn't even know how to line up. I didn't even think about that. I do remember that we would sometimes get a year 7 tutor group, which is, it doesn't mean that you're tutoring them in stuff. It's like homeroom, okay, for the Americans. Tutor group here is homeroom in America. This didn't have enough ink. So when I first started at this school, your first tutor group would be all that first year, so they'd all be 11. They'd all be new to the school, and you could tell who had what tutor because the tutor would their homeroom teacher essentially is molding them to what they want. So you could pick, what are you going to spend a lot of effort on? Do you want their uniform to be perfect? Do you want every kid in your class to carry a reading book all the time? All that sort of stuff. And so, do you want them to line up in silence, or do they just come in and get to their chair? And I found that bit really interesting. But then when I'd been there several years, they decided to have a mix-up. And they literally mixed all the groups so that you never had all the year 7s together anymore. They did what they called vertical tutoring, where you would have 5 year 7s, 5 year 8s, 5 year 9s, 5 year 10s, 5 year 11s in each homeroom, each tutor group. Oh my goodness, it took away the best bit, because if the 5 from year 10 and 11 that you inherited had all come from tutor groups who before had been allowed to do whatever and never had anything checked, they were terrible role models for your brand new baby year 7s. And you were like, oh, what do I do now? So that was interesting. I preferred the all the same group, but I know it was uneven, because if your tutor stayed with you all the way through, then the kids in that class tended to be well prepared because they'd had one teacher the whole way through. But not all groups would have that, and some groups would end up with 10 different tutors between year 7 and year 11. So doing it vertically, they were trying to kind of get rid of that influence that the teacher had. But there we go. Now I'm just putting these pieces around to have some layering and dot the colors. So this pink appears here, here. I'm going to move it over to here. You could also put it on here if you wanted. The yellow I've got here and here. Might find a third bit of yellow to put somewhere. And then I have this piece here, which I'm considering popping up with Pappios. Let's do that. Let's make this a dimensional tag. Ginny taught kindergarten, so she had a lot of undiagnosed students with special needs come through her doors, and some days it was just about keeping everyone safe. Yep. Well done. I often get on a soapbox with friends who are still in education about what do they call an IEP in America these days? So here they're now called an educational healthcare plan, EHCP, but that's what came of the old individual education plan if you had any sort of difference that you needed addressed in the classroom at any part of any spectrums. And so I find it really wild and get on a soapbox. Oh, okay, Debbie says they're still just called an IEP in the States. Okay. So the same document, but, you know, different letters to move with different initiatives. And in America, are they ridiculously hard to get done? The bureaucracy is silly. And you look at somebody as a teacher and with experience, you look and you're like, you know what this kid needs in my classroom? They need A, B, and C, and that will make their life so much easier. It will make things easier for the rest of the class. It will help their learning. This is not rocket science. It's quite obvious what we need. Yeah. And I felt like that all the time. And all of my friends who are in education at any level still say, like, it takes years to get through on paper the approval for what you can see in the classroom in like the first week of the year. And you're like, okay, this is what this kid needs. And I get on this soapbox all the time going, it should not be ridiculous to get an individual education plan because we're teaching individuals. I know we have a group of them, but we're teaching individual kids. So it's so weird that the bureaucracy means it takes months to years to get that stuff approved, when 9 times out of 10, the teachers who see that kid all the time know exactly what would help that child in the classroom. It's pathetic that that is how it works. It just really shouldn't. It shouldn't have to be that problem. Okay, so I think this, changing topics again, this is our starting point. Okay, so I know it's not an earthquake. I have to double tap the phone to get the screen grab at this point. So here we go. Did I get it in one? No, it didn't go. Oh, how can I do it? How many earthquakes do I have to make happen? Come on, third time lucky. Why are you not taking it? Okay, I'm going to do it this way. That did do it. But I think when I do it with the button, I get the camera interface. Okay, so I'm going to try one more time. Yay! Okay, that one should be clean. But I'm sorry that you had to go through 4 earthquakes. It's okay. Now, so that's our starting point. What have we got? We've got 1/3, 2/3 with a border strip. We took 2 big journaling cards, but you could use boxes of paper. This could be 1 big box of paper if you prefer, but with the papery pack, we're doing 2 big cards here. Then we've got a 3x4, 2 just smaller than 3x4, and a bunch of tuckies to get us started. Okay? From here, you then go your own way with what you want to do. So I have these 4 small photos. You might have 1 big photo and you want to put it here. You might have 2 landscape photos to put here. You might have a photo to put over here. you can work with this setup and decide where all the small pictures are going to go, or whether, not, they don't have to be small, where your pictures are going to go. And things like, do you want more title than what's already here? And how much writing do you want to do? Okay. Oh my goodness. Jade sounds like her school is on it. IEPs have to be written, signed, and in place within the first 5 weeks of the year. But that must mean that your job for the first half term of school is like bonkers. If you're getting new kids and going to, here's all the stuff I have to get done. So I love that they're on top of it and you're not having to wait a year, but it does also sound like there's got to be a catch, Jade. I'm guessing the catch comes down to you have to do a lot of work. Right, these edges are all bigger on the outside now than the inside. It's like the TARDIS. No. So I'm going to have to trim all the way around. Oh, that makes me smile a lot too, Jenny. When kids who are a challenge in your classroom grow up to find the thing that works for them, that's a really, really lovely payoff later. Like the feeling. I mean, there are things about teaching where you're just like, you know what? It's rewarding, but don't ask me about it right now. And that part, very rewarding. I mean, I often talk about one of my students who just couldn't catch a break in life for a long time. And she worked so bloomin' hard. She was super talented anyway, very, very clever, and she worked really hard. And she ended up going to Cambridge, and she has a doctorate. And I'm so happy that everything worked in her favor, because she could have given up at any point. She could have been like, you know what? The world is pointing to this is not going to work for you. This is not going to happen. And instead, she kept plodding along and finding ways and talking to people to be like, I need help with this. What can we do? Because, you know, I have to do this and I don't have the money for that. And everybody else who's doing this has gone to fancy independent schools since they were 3 years old or whatever. And every time I would get an update about, oh, miss, I know I haven't seen you in years, but this just happened. And I would tear up every stinking time. I was just so proud of her that she just kept ignoring all of that negativity in the world, all of the signs that were pointing to no. She was like, you know what? That's not for me. And that's amazing. People can flourish in the worst of conditions. It's sad that they have to, but they can do it. And so that bit is really rewarding. But definitely a kid who I cried a lot of tears for that girl along her way, where I was just like, I can't leave it and I want this girl to catch a break. It's not fair. And so, yeah. And kids who have major setbacks that maybe weren't expected, kids who get illnesses, have breakdowns or whatever, and they come out the other side strong, and it may have taken years. They may end up behind their peers by the time they've recovered, but then they're stronger for it. And those kind of messages that I get from kids that I used to teach, and now they're proper grown-ups who are married with children and all of this stuff, and the things that they go on to do, anytime I do hear, that bit, I'm like, oh, all of that heartache was definitely worth it. I'm so glad that good things happened for people. But along the way, it's pretty hard. Okay, so I'm trying to work out where do we want these 4 to go, because I also want the writing space. Jade says that process at her school is a little crazy at the beginning of the year, but theoretically makes the rest of the year much easier. She's curious, what is it that's in your IEPs for them to take so long? Is it the approval process? So anything that would get you extra support has to be proven with a diagnosis, and all of the process for getting a diagnosis has long wait lists. So mostly you're just waiting your turn. And so when I was a kid, your school, like, you got taken into a little office at school and they asked you a bunch of questions. I mean, I did identify with Sheldon Cooper a lot. Every time somebody would say you're crazy and he would say, no, I'm not. My mother had me tested. Yeah, I did that test in the little office at my small little farm town school many times, because I was a little different. And so, yeah, they don't have anybody in an individual school that can make those sorts of assessments. So you've got to wait until a medical professional comes to do that. And it's just a case of, it's a really long wait. Georgia says, yeah, adult ADHD assessment is a 2-year wait in this country. So if you go to your GP with a list of symptoms and go, I think I might have ADHD, could I talk to somebody about it? Here are the symptoms that match up with, everything that I can read in a magazine or whatever. A magazine, that's adorable, Shimelle. What decade are you in? And they'll just put your name on the list, but you won't get an appointment about it for like 2 years. They'll probably give you some homework in advance. A couple of my friends have had adult assessment, and there comes a point where in the wait where they go ahead and send you like a survey and some stuff that, like, your parents, if you still have your parents, they answer, because then they can answer questions about you growing up and stuff like that. But even for kids, like, a dyslexia diagnosis can take a year and a half, and that is time that could be used so well if the diagnosis came faster. But instead you're waiting, and so the child's not getting the support because the school doesn't get the money unless the diagnosis is there. Does that make sense? Tell me if that sounds like rubbish, Jade, or if that, like, toward your system, or if you can imagine how that would apply. Okay, I am looking at these at the bottom. It's a very different choice, but I actually don't hate it. But I think I liked them better at the top. I haven't left quite enough room to put them in here, but I could move this. But I don't love them as a grid. I like them better in a line. Yeah? Yes, Ginny, we had stuff like that too. Ginny had a nonverbal student, but the parent didn't give approval for any testing, so then they don't get any extra support. Yeah, you've got to have parents on board. And Lorraine teaches at a school where the attendance is an issue. If they don't come, then it takes longer. Yep, we had that too. We had that with substance abuse. Teenagers with substance abuse problems have terrible attendance, but you couldn't get them referred unless you had a certain number of incidents where you could say pretty confidently that they were under the influence while they were at school. So they would just very quickly learn to not come in. And so, yeah. Oh, Lorraine had somebody that it took until 3rd grade to get her tested. Yeah, it's frustrating. We're all these kind of people who are not leaving it at school, are we? We're all taking it home. We just want it to be better for the kids. That's all we want. We don't ask for much in life. Just for every child to get what they need. When we start teaching, it seems like such an easy, wonderful thing. This won't be any problem at all. And I do remember there was a teacher that I really did not enjoy. She had a lot of respect in our school, but I particularly did not enjoy her attitude. And she was at the end of her career, and she came in to evaluate my teaching one day in my first year of teaching. And in her assessment, she just said, "I've never seen such an example of youthful enthusiasm. It won't last." And I was so annoyed at the time, but then, I left 8 years later. So, and let us always laugh. I did 8 years and then came away with a long service award when I left. 8 years should not be long service. This is the state of education. They won't fit that way. I still kind of want to keep the blue ledger for a big writing kind of thing. So I'm running out of papers that are the right size to put those 4 on. So I think I need to grab something else. I'd kind of like to bring red in. There wasn't a red B-side. It's just an accent color. We need red. Let's have red. Oh, that is always annoying, Julie, when you get a kid in front of you who you're like, why has no one noticed this? And there was a massive plot line in My So-Called Life about this. Since we're the generation who wore flannel shirts and bodysuits, I'm also the generation who watched My So-Called Life. The whole plot with Jordan Catalano is that he can't read, and no one's realized it until like partway through high school, and he's already been held back. And yet we don't do that in the UK, by the way. It's kind of I always used to get lots of questions from British teachers about, is it true that you'll just have to do the year again? I'm like, well, I mean, it's kind of a last resort, but yeah. The whole plot line was that basically he was dyslexic and couldn't read, and nobody had ever noticed. So it wasn't really that this kid was, they kind of wrote him off as a loser. And really, he just couldn't read because nobody noticed. So yeah, anytime you would end up in your class you'd end up with somebody in your class where you were like, surely somebody has noticed XYZ. And you'd go to the file and there's no mention of it. You're like, really? It seems obvious. Okay, so this red is not as bold as that red. But I'm going to live with it for now. If I dislike it later, I could always pull in a bolder red. Okay. Oh, Ginny, you're lovely. Ginny says, I'm still teaching with youthful enthusiasm. I just teach scrapbooking now. It's very kind of you. Okay, so what if we took that across here? I like it. Do we like it? Do I take this over that? Yeah. Okay, so maybe I just move these little tuckies here up to the top. And we're going to place this right above where it says daily. We'll put this sideways vertically instead of horizontally. Georgia said her school would just expel anybody who came to school under the influence. Well, interesting that you say that. So one of the initiatives we had when I was teaching was a huge call to stop expelling students. So the school would have to basically pay a fine if you expelled anybody. So it was really, really a last resort. I could list things that should definitely get you expelled that basically got you a single detention because they weren't kicking kids out. Yeah, it was wild and wacky. And so, yeah, I definitely had kids in my class under the influence. And then one time I learned to just keep quiet about it and let them sit at the back of the class and then deal with it later. Because one day I actually questioned a kid because I kind of didn't believe it. I was like, this girl is like really slurring her words. And she's like 13 and it's 8:30 in the morning. And I think I was just in such disbelief that I said, so-and-so, can I just ask you, are you drunk? And she didn't deny it. She just owned up to it. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. I don't know what I was expecting, but it was not that. And then later in the day, she snuck into my classroom to like graffiti everything because I'd got her busted. I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. Right, let's go back to embellishment. So now I've got journaling space here. I've got typewriters as an embellishment on the right-hand side of the page. So let's bring typewriters as an embellishment over to the left-hand side of the page. And maybe pop them up. I like that concept, Jade. Jade says that at her school, they would write the IEPs for anybody and you'd get funding for kids that have diagnosis. But if it's just a case of this is what I'm going to need for this kid in my classroom, you go ahead and write that in. And I mean, I didn't work in administration, so maybe there's a reason that they don't do that here. But I personally would think that that's very sensible and helps your classroom management a lot. Also must help so much if you have a substitute, because we had no means to give notes about anything that wasn't a formal issue with a child. So, you know, when you need to give an update that so-and-so will probably come in late and this is the situation, you know, you weren't allowed to leave notes like that. But that's the sort of thing that helps a lesson with a substitute actually stay a lesson and not just babysitting. If they know how to deal with things and what's out of character versus what's expected, you know, if so-and-so does X, what is the standard punishment or sanction, or do you roll with it? How can they be consistent with what you do? And we mostly found that any day that you had a substitute was just a non-learning day. Yeah. Even though we mostly didn't have substitutes who came in. We mostly covered for other teachers. It was whoever didn't have a lesson, you would give up your marking time to go teach other people's classes when they were sick. That's a whole little kettle of fish. That's one of those things that drives people out of teaching. I usually didn't mind it. Like, I didn't mind the actual teaching a different subject part. I found that could be quite fun. I once had to take a history lesson on the American West, and that was hysterical because obviously I grew up with history books of the American West in America, and the story told in a British history book was very different. So that was funny. And I quite enjoyed the challenge of, you know, I'm an English teacher, but let's prove to the kids that I can actually do some math. That's kind of cool. But you did sometimes just walk into the lesson and be like, they've left nothing, and I don't know what you teach in this year. And I would always then be behind with my marking because you've just given up your marking time. And some teachers would be like, I'm not giving up my marking time. So they'd go in and put a movie on and do their marking in the corner of the room. I never found that kids actually settled for a movie. And I'm guessing that's even worse now because attention spans largely have got smaller. So I'm guessing putting a movie on now probably gets you more discipline issues than it did in my day. Okay, let's see what else we want from these stickers. I said I wanted more yellow, so I've got yellow here and here. I need yellow here. Let's do this one here. Debbie likes seeing how history books are written in different places. Debbie's a history teacher. Because it's a really interesting perspective. Yeah. I remember specifically that it was very funny that part of the American West that they had the Pony Express in their textbook, but the Pony Express started in St. Joseph, Missouri, which is just a little bit north of Kansas City. So we would have learned that, even though I was on the Kansas side, we would have learned that in state and local history. The British textbook really was not very favorable about the Pony Express. It brought it down to being like, well, it was very short-lived. It wasn't really deemed that successful. But if you grow up local to Pony Express history, you learn the side of it that was a positive, that, you know, like it got people into work who didn't have a job. It created a lot of methods of like lines of communication that didn't exist in the middle of the country where we didn't have anything yet. And it was very important to kind of connecting civilization in that part. And so the textbook that was kind of like, oh, the Pony Express was a bit of a failed experiment. But if you read it in the Midwest, you'll be like, the Pony Express really formed a lot of influential stuff in the middle of the country. And I found that really funny. Like, oh, let's not trash the Pony Express. It had its positives. It had its negatives too, but, you know. Debbie says, even the various resources to create history content will vary widely, even in one country, definitely. And especially in a country that, like, takes state and local history so strict. We had to do 2 different years where our history class in school, both 4th grade and 7th grade, history was just Kansas history. So not only were we not looking at the international element, we weren't even looking at the country. We're just looking at our state, which I found really interesting living on a state line, because it was only if the teacher decided to include local stuff that you would get the things that happened, you know, a 20-minute drive to the right on the map. Let's go 20 miles to the state line. 20, not even 20 miles, 20 minutes. Yes, okay. Debbie says Texas also has 4th grade and 7th grade are just Texas history. Yeah. It's wild. And Corey says Pony Express still referenced in mailing and shipping commercials and movies. Definitely. If I saw a little, like, fast pony with a bag on it, I know that that's about post. But not in English. Okay, what else are we going to do with this? Do I want to put a title on it? Or am I using this? I do want to put letters on it, actually. Right, here we go. Here. Georgia doesn't even know what the Pony Express is. It was cowboy mail, basically. So it was people delivering post on ponies. It was posties on horseback. But it was connecting a big part of the country. The government had made this massive purchase of all the land in the middle of the country. But we didn't have any infrastructure. So you couldn't get a message. And there's this very interesting bit about American history at a really superficial level, because, you know, like Debbie could give us proper lessons here. But one thing that Brits have to keep in mind, or people from other countries have to keep in mind, that America didn't just grow. I'm imagining the map here. We have New England, and most Americans, or most people, assume that we started the country in New England and then we expanded out. But we didn't, because we had this, and we had California. And then we kind of chipped away at the middle. Debbie will correct me if that very simplistic summary makes her twitch. But like the idea that we didn't just keep going in one direction until we got to the other side. We kind of had bits and pieces and then connected it up. So it meant that you had massive parts of the country at one point in time that didn't have any way to communicate with the others. And so the Pony Express, although slightly short-lived, was hugely influential in that. But not if you read the textbook that I had to teach from that day. So yeah, that's the interesting bit. That it didn't just grow. It was more like a jigsaw puzzle, and you're finding the edges and putting it together. Okay, Debbie's cool with my simplistic version. Yay, Debbie. Yes, many ways that America expanded across the continent. Yeah, it's not all one piece. Yeah. And Sophia points out that there's just so much British history that you can't cover it all. So you just pick and choose. So that American West I don't know if it still is, but for a long while, it was one of the options you could take if you had chosen history as an elective as a teenager. And then from that, your teacher would say, a bit like in English, we could teach different novels from a short list. So in history, they would have different topics, and your teacher would choose from that short list. I'm going to do, like when I was teaching, the history department had a unit on medicine and a unit on the American West, and then everything else was kind of like British and European. Right. Oh yes, I've gone to a Pony Express, like a museum or an exhibit. I can't remember if the whole museum was about the Pony Express or not. In Sacramento, I've done it because I was in Sacramento and I passed it and I was like, hold on. I grew up at the start of the Pony Express. Let's go in. Oh, and I forgot what I was writing. That's hilarious. So yeah, there is a lot of the other end of the Pony Express history in California, in Sacramento. Okay, let's spell the right word. Okay, here we are. Maybe just put a bigger gap here. Oh, there was a great little, one of those things where they take all the different numbers and kind of give you the perspective of time. And like the fact that the pyramids to the Romans are like as old as the Romans are to us and stuff like that, right? So they're going, whoa, this is ancient. But we're also going, oh, you're ancient. And one of those was that Oxford University is older than the Incan temples. Now, I haven't fact-checked that, but it was believable in the years that they gave. Oxford is really stinking old. So yes, for those of you who are wondering, how much history is in this country? A lot. But there's also the exciting stuff that they dig things up. And I was never big into archaeology growing up or anything, but I now get a really big kick when there's like something in this city, and sometimes really close to where we live, where they've excavated a whole area and they're like, we have a scene. We have the whole room from the Romans or something, because they basically just built a city on top of a city. That's what London is. So there's a whole city underneath London that was Roman London, Londinium. And so it's all just there. And different people will pay to like dig up different parts of town, and you'll just find all of this stuff. And so that gets so cool. And we had they funded a bunch of digging in Greenwich Park not all that long ago. And the things that we're finding, and you're like, I've been walking over this for years, and there's all sorts of stuff there. Yes, and Sophia points out, like, we have Stonehenge is famous, but we have multiple of those. There's a lot of henges where there's a bunch of unexplained giant rocks in a formation, and we're like, who put them here and where did they come from? Yeah, it's pretty cool. But I didn't really have any idea about that when I was growing up, and so now I'm only kind of starting to appreciate how cool it is because I can literally like go walk to it. They'll quite often do, they'll excavate it and then they'll put like a glass floor over it so you can just stand on top and look in, and that's my favorite. That for all digs. Yes, please. Make it so I can't break anything, and now let me look at it. Thank you. This is archaeology for the masses. Okay. I feel like this needs one more word. Do I put like your study season or its study season? I feel like it needs one more. Oh yeah. Sorry. Hinges can be made out of all sorts of things. Georgia, correct me up. We just walk around in England like not another hinge. Not quite that many. Okay, what do we think? I also like more contemporary stuff that's been left around. Like if you go down toward the South Coast and you find the pepper pots where they were prepared for invasion in World War II, they just walked away and left them there. So that, like, to me, that's like an older version of the fallout shelter that I used to go sit and read books in the summer holiday. What word? What word? Your or the? Your? It's? I think your is going to be slightly too long. It's? Have I got an apostrophe? I've got one little dot I could use. Georgia. We give them out like you get a hinge, you get a hinge, everybody gets a hinge. Oh, I'm glad you took a break from work, Georgia, because I don't think you can be trusted to study and work in this mental state. Okay, we're going to do it. Okay, it fits beautifully. So that was the right call. Okay, there we go. Now, what else are we going to add to finish this? I know you weren't expecting it, but it's these. So this one up here at the top of the journaling. That's super cool, Julie. Her daughter did 2 weeks of digging at Skipsy, and then it was featured on Digging for Britain. Amazing. British television's a little different too. Let's just say. If you've watched the Great British Bake Off from another country and you're like, oh, this is so wholesome. They have shows that are just like people doing a thing. Yeah. We have a show where they just repair stuff. We have a show where they bring in stuff that you found in your attic and they tell you if it's worth anything. We have a lot of shows where they dig stuff up and see what's under the ground. And we don't do it like, okay, so the thing that I always remember, things that are going to be unearthed on television. From my childhood, it was Al Capone's vault, which was going to be like live on TV. And the darn thing was empty. It just had like empty alcohol bottles in it. And And there was this huge buildup. Everybody I know was watching it. We would not have the huge buildup. We would just be like, tune in tomorrow for this archaeology show. And then on that show, they're going to show you that they found, you know, an entire bakery from Roman times. And here we go. Like, very different. Shell remembers the vault. It was so disappointing, right? It was this big marketing thing. And then no, nothing really. Okay, so we have this little combination. So we just kind of keep it chill. I mean, we do also have traders, but no spoilers. I haven't watched last week's. I have to finish though because the finale is while I'm away with friends this weekend. It's my one weekend away. And my friends are already like, the traders finale is while we're away and we are watching. Oh, and see, Rita points out, what did you learn in history in school and what were your favorites? American Civil War and Revolutionary War. Here's the brilliant thing. The first time I ever had to cover a history lesson in this country, and I turned the page to the British-American War, and I was like, what year are we talking about? Oh, the British-American War. We call it the Revolution. But shockingly, the other side does not. So that was very entertaining. It was called in the textbook the British-American War. Well, I don't have any family down in the Black Country, but the museum sounds like a brilliant way to spend a day. I love a museum. We all know it. I could come on Monday, you know? But that is, yeah, that's very cool. The unfortunate spot of bother across the pond. Yep. Accurate. Okay, I think that one is not going to work. But we're going to put in, you like this little grouping here now. Circle, medium flower, small flower. Yes, Carrie, we love Hamilton in this country. It sells out every show. So, you know. And somebody once said, do not just import loads of Americans to play all the parts because like to get the accents right and everything. And we're like, but no. Oh, yay! Georgia is following along and she thinks it's the first time that she's just followed along and put stuff where I'm putting stuff. And she's really enjoying thinking more about the placement of things. I like that a lot. I'm glad that you've given it a try. Oh, Julie, no, my in-laws are in Kent, but I do have brother and sister-in-law in Solihull, and so, but we just haven't been there in a really long time because we never leave London. But eventually, yes. Yeah. So that would be cool. We need dots. Yes. And maybe, do we put this on here? Yeah. We're just going to use this twine until I run out. Yeah. When it's over the photo, then I tend to do a bow because that's going to take less vertical here. I'm also realizing that 50% of these photos show him studying in burger establishments. That one is quite obviously in Five Guys. That's in McDonald's. That's while queuing to meet Santa. That's on the train. He's working hard. But I think we are nearly, he's done all the tests now, nearly to a point where we can chill a little bit from taking books everywhere. Just not permanently, just a small break. Can take novels to read. This will, my English teacher friends, this will bring you joy. So obviously when you're preparing for lots of exams, you tend to get like a reading list of suggested things so that when you get to the comprehension and it's harder than what you would typically do at school, it's not going to throw you. And what he decided to do was to alternate the books from the reading list that are hard and challenging and different literary styles with a book that is just current age appropriate, easy read, that he can like blast through in a day. And he says then, because I still get like lots of stories that will just make me laugh and, just reading for joy. And I just thought that was a great strategy, because he often, when he finishes a book, he'll send me to the library to just pick up something, and he'll give me like bullet points. He'll be like, I want something, this. And then I get the fun of going to the library and finding what fits that, which cracks me up because the boy has his own library at home and he's sending me into the library to find things, but we're reading, we're not questioning it. And so he will do just read something really heavy and then put in something else. So Corey says, what are the examples? So he just read, now this wouldn't be considered hard or anything. He read Charlotte's Web the other day because that's not a book that's normally taught here. So although I had to read it in like 3rd grade, he wouldn't have seen that. And that's basically like a cultural piece, because it's very American. It's very of its time. And like he'd never read anything that dealt with farm life at all. I think the last time he'd read something about farm life was one of those board books that says like the baby cow is called a calf. Yeah. So he had to read Charlotte's Web. And then he immediately then followed it up with a book called Goth Girl, which is like a almost graphic novel, more a novel with the odd picture here and there, that he could read in a day, that was about what happens if a girl who's a vampire just goes to high school. And so he's like, yeah, I want something about like a school story that's really funny, maybe with a character who's a little bit weird. And so I went and looked at a bunch of stuff and I'm like, oh, how about this? And he came and was like, yes, that's perfect. Yeah, I'm going to read about this vampire girl tomorrow. And then we'll go back to the list. So he's done I know my mind's going blank on different titles, but he's read a lot of things to get into different genres. And we did first bit of Dickens as well. So he read Christmas Carol, which I always think should be everybody's first foray into Dickens, unless you don't have any interest in reading anything about Christmas, because it is actually a joy to read. And it's not heavy. Like I taught my first teaching job, they went straight in with Nicholas Nickleby, and that was sad. That's too heavy. Don't start with Nicholas Nickleby. Corey says, has he read Stuart Little or Runaway Ralph? He has not read Stuart Little yet. This was the first E.B. White, but he read all of the Runaway Ralph books really early on. Runaway Ralph was one of the first like characters that really captured his imagination. And those were the books that I think then Sophia's boys read them as well, because we were talking about them one day. Yeah, dots, and then we're done. Sorry, I am talking a storm today. Georgia enjoyed Animal Farm. Do you know, I got the Adhesive Avenger to read Animal Farm when we first met because he hadn't read it. And I was like, what? I'm sorry, what? So I think Animal Farm is in the near future with WB. Sophia started with Great Expectations. Yep, Great Expectations, way, way better start than Nicholas Nickleby. Jane Loves Cricket on the Hearth. I could even cope with starting with Oliver Twist. but I think you have to be mentally prepared, and I don't know, yeah. So, but don't start with Nicholas Nickleby. I was so annoyed when they were like, yes, they have to do this and this. So it was a class of 12 and 13-year-olds. Nicholas Nickleby, really? Opinions, I had them. But my first teaching job was one where I didn't get choices. So did what I was told. And it was kind of odd because it was a very different type of school than I had gone to. Let's say that. But we all start somewhere. That's where I started. Oh, sorry. No, Julie, it wasn't a Neil Gaiman book. The author's name was Chris something. It probably has a subtitle with something else. But yeah, it's definitely primary and definitely not Neil Gaiman. They're actually having Coraline as their class reader at the moment, and I'm like, oh, that's poor timing. Anyway, so let's go up here with the red next. I think actually now that lighter red works out okay. We've got kind of a little variation in the red. Yeah, the one that he's gonna blitz through in a day is funny. Oh, Sophia's kids finished series of unfortunate events last night. Yay! I love it. Oh, so much. And that means now you can have a month of Netflix to watch the show. Right. I'm not going to put the live your best life here. Let's do this one. Focus on the good here underneath. But this sticker sheet is cut slightly off. Oh, I'm so glad that you gave those books a try. There. Okay, so journaling is going to go just a little bit here, and then the main journaling here. I maybe need a little phrase sticker here. The ones that are like overly positive would, like if I put the don't forget, he'd be like, I wish I could. Oh, Call of the Wild is on his list for this year. And I read it that same age and really loved it. And I remember I read Call of the Wild, and then The Adventures of Natty Gann came out. I haven't watched Natty Gann since I was about 15, probably. But I remember it with so much love. And he loves dogs. So I think he might like both Call of the Wild and Natty Gann. I hope it holds up. But I really liked it. But yeah, Call of the Wild is on his book list. Of course, like anything but Beverly Cleary. Yeah. He read the Fudge books quite early on. He also has Paula Danziger on his list this year, which always makes my face light up. I love Paula Danziger so much. She was a scrapbooker, gives her bonus points. I loved her before she was a scrapbooker, and I got to meet her in person at CKU, and I have never been more starstruck. That woman's books got me through being the only kid from a blended family growing up and in my town. This Place Has No Atmosphere is my favorite of her catalog. It's not even what most people would say is her best book ever, but it spoke to me, and I kind of wanted to live on the moon. So it's about a girl who goes to live on the moon, but she kind of has a crush on a boy back home on Earth. We're not talking super serious writing, but it helped so much. And her humor, just really relatable humor that I find that is a literary skill to be able to A, write like that, or B, read it and realize that she's making light of things that are quite serious. I love her. I love her work and just amazing stuff. I got really upset when I moved here and found out that she did loads of British kids television. And I was like, what, you got her on TV? Like, what? Oh, Corey. Oh, see, Corey and I always find things that explain so much about why we get along. She also loves this place has no atmosphere, followed by Remember Me to Herald Square. Aw, gorgeous books. The cat ate my gym suit. I hated PE, so I was up for that. Didn't even have a cat. But yes, she was at CKU New England, and somebody said, oh yeah, there's this like children's author here. And I was like, who? And they said, I think her name's Paula. And I'm like, I dropped what I was working on. I'm like, are you telling me that Paula Danziger is in this hotel? And I really got myself worked up into a frenzy. And then everybody else was like, okay, we're going to take you to meet her. We're making this happen. And she was exactly as genuine as you imagine her to be. And I wrote her name in fancy lettering with polka dots and brushed pens. Yeah. And I cried a little. Yep. It was a good day. Right. So today, you don't get to meet Paula Danziger, but I hope you also have a good day. Thank you for coming along for this starting point. And interesting, I'd love to hear how many of you ended up here because I put it on the Facebook group right before we started. Because I just posted a link on Facebook to say we're starting now. And I'd love to know if that's how you got here. Should I spam the Facebook group twice a week before we live stream? I don't know. Have a wonderful week. I'll be here again Friday at 10 a.m. It may be live, not live, depending on train times, because I'm going to do that one weekend away of my year. And it's all mums, and we all go for 2.5 days. So thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed this video and you want to give it a thumbs up, that'd be super duper awesome, and I truly extra appreciate it. Have a good one. I'll see you Friday one way or the other, and then back for 2 more next week, Monday and Friday. Okay? Thank you. Stay safe. Have fun. Bye. I can't find the right buttons on the keyboard. Found them.